So on April Fool's I released this video where a flying machine was covered with sand. Now I purposely released this video on April Fool's so that many of you thought that this video was fake and that it somehow used command blocks in order to achieve this. But you guys know me, I don't like to fool around, I actually try to deliver. And this contraption is completely possible to build in survival Minecraft. This means that the contraption does not use commands or command blocks in any way. So in this video I will try to explain everything about this contraption. However, before I get on with this quite in-depth explanation, I first want to show off the contraption in a bit more detail. So right now the inputs are these daylight sensors, and if I quickly activate the daylight sensor and remove the block, you will see that the machine comes to life. Now it takes some time to get the data from like the input from the daylight sensors to the machine, but once it's here you can see that all the sand starts dropping down. Then in a series of 4 explosions, this machine creates a pillar, then one wall. After that it will create a second wall, and in the last, most laggy explosion, it will fill this entire area in, like this. Alright, so you're probably wondering why I have these daylight sensors as input, and that is so that you can actually capture a flying machine inside the sand block. Destroying flying machines is kind of become a tradition for me. I don't know, there's just something that's really satisfying about destroying flying machines. Anyway, so if the flying machine flies above these daylight sensors, a very similar thing will happen. So again, sand will drop down and it will once again create these different walls and pillars. And yeah, there we go, it fills it in, and also the flying machine will actually explode on impact. Alright, so in the description I also left a world download for this world. So I will quickly talk about how to operate this machine. So it is very simple. So before you want to shoot again, you first have to make sure that all the sand is in place. So for that I left these command blocks here, which will fill in this area with sand. And just to prove that these command blocks are not used in any way for the machine, I'll just remove them right now and shoot it again. Okay, so anyway, once you make absolutely sure that all the sand is in place, you can come to here and you can either build up the flying machine that I just showed, or you can activate it by placing a block here, then waiting for a couple of seconds and remove the block again. Now you will have to wait for about 10 seconds, which is used to transfer the signal upwards. And then you should see that all the sand starts dropping down. And it can become pretty laggy right now. So there are like over 1,000 sand entities involved here, and also quite a bit of TNT. So you will probably see that the game starts to struggle a bit. And also what I recommend is to run this on a carpet server. Now this is not necessary, but the carpet server has a very important command, which is fast moving entity optimization. And basically this doesn't change the game in any way, it just, well, as the command kind of suggests, it optimizes fast moving entities, which is quite important in this contraption. So it can completely run without this command, but you are probably gonna roast the server or the PC that you're running this on. I first want to give some credits to 4 people. The first person is Dinner. He was active in the faction cannoneer community, where they basically made cannons that actually use somewhat similar tech. But since there's a big difference in the versions, we couldn't really translate all the tech to 1.12. And to do this we had some help from XCOM. He supplied us with some information about optimal TNT alignment. Then I want to thank Methodz. He already did some stuff with this instant sand placement, and he was kind enough to help me out when I struggled a bit getting everything correct. And the last person I want to thank is Khazamer, and he basically helped with some of the redstone and just helped me stay motivated through this project. Alright, so now I can really start explaining how you can make this sand place down instantly. So for this I have to look at 2 different concepts. The first concept is TNT triangle mechanics, and the second concept, I guess you can describe it as sand entity update order or something like that. So what I'm about to explain also was explained in one of Methodz videos. I'll just be explaining it again in order to make this video kind of self-contained. Here I've got the command block set up, and what it will do is it will summon a lot of TNT in this block, and then it will also summon a TNT right here, and they will explode immediately. So this TNT here, it will be propelled along this diagonal path here. And then after one gain tick, we say after one triangle, the TNT will be right here and it will explode roughly here. So I can show this in action. So you can see most of the TNT explodes down here, and the one TNT that got propelled will explode up here. So what you will expect is, okay, you shoot it diagonally, so the TNT will travel this path. But because this TNT travels all this distance in one gain tick, it will actually not travel across this path, but the path of the TNT will be kind of vectorized. So it will first travel in the y direction, and after it has traveled like all the way in the y direction, it will move in the x direction. And only after it's traveled all the way in the x direction, it will do the z direction to basically end up in the same location as you would expect it to end up. So also to show that, you can see that the TNT just seems to pass straight through this stone block, but that is because it will in fact travel across the path of these open fence gates. Alright, now this is where it gets really interesting, because you can actually influence the path of the TNT by, for example, obstructing it. So in this case I can close this fence gate, and now the TNT will travel upwards until it hits the fence gate, and now all momentum in the y direction will be lost, and it will still travel across like this path here, but now it will explode a bit lower, as you can see right here. Alright, so what's also pretty cool is that you can block the path of the TNT in multiple places. And if you give the TNT a little more fuse time, it will actually continue flying in this line. So right now the TNT will go up, bump into here, go sideways, bump into here, and then it continues flying and it will bump into this block. And as you can see, the TNT will be shot against here, falls down, and it will explode right here. Now, for example, by changing the path of the TNT, so by closing this fence gate, the TNT will take a different path, and right now it will end up against this other block. And this is how you can really play around with the location where you want your TNT to end up. So what is important here is that this triangle tech does not only work with TNT, but for example, if I were to propel not a TNT, but a send entity, it will follow the exact same path. Alright, so one other thing that you can do with this TNT triangle tech, and I guess this entity order, is make some giant tunnelers. So here you can see an example of that. However, if you want to know how this works in regards to the fuse time of the individual TNTs, you really have to check out Methodz channel. I also want that his video gets some attention from all of this. So now that you hopefully understand how these TNT triangles work, I want to continue the explanation by showing how you can use kind of the send entity order to create pillars, walls, and eventually fill in the entire walls instantly, like you could see with this machine here. Alright, so there's actually quite a big difference between creating the pillars and creating the walls in terms of the TNT triangles that I used. So let's discuss how each of them work. Alright, so first we've got the pillar, and this actually might be one of the more complicated ones. So what we've got is we've got a bunch of TNT that shoots a few send entities. And what you've got to imagine here is that the send entities are slightly lower than the TNT. So the TNT will roughly propel them in this direction, but it will give them slight downwards momentum. Like this. And this means that the triangle that the send will make when flying actually also will go slightly downwards, but only for like 10 or 20 blocks or so. So the send will start in the y direction, like the same as with the triangles earlier, but at some point it will basically hit its natural size, the same as that we saw over there. And when it has come to this point, it will just start going in the x direction. And now, because the send is mostly propelled in this direction, the size of the triangle inside this direction will actually be way bigger than the size in the downwards direction. But luckily at some point we can stop all momentum in this direction, and then we enter the last direction, namely the z direction. And so then we can also stop the momentum in the z direction by having another block here, and then after one game tick the send will be here. But please realize here that if you influence the path of the send in a different way, for example not stopping the send in those directions or in those locations, but for example stopping it right here, then after one game tick the send will be in an entirely different location. So by carefully moving around the blocks that interfere with the path of the send, you can have the send in any location after one game tick that you possibly want. Anyway, after one game tick, all the send is in this location and it will enter the second triangle. Now the second triangle will be quite a bit smaller in size than the first triangle, simply because the TNT will lose momentum quite quickly. So you have to imagine, right now there are about, I don't know, maybe 10 send entities inside this spot, and the momentum in two directions has been cancelled, which means that basically the only momentum inside this TNT triangle will be down. So what will happen is, first one send entity will be processed. It will fly down and it will hit this block, and it will turn into a send block immediately. Then the second send entity will be processed. It flies down, it hits the bottom send block, and it will create a send block on top. And like this it will just go upwards until it basically reaches this final spot, and then all the send entities will be inside this block, and it means that they just pop off into items like this. Now let's move on to the second stage, where the machine actually will proceed to build the first wall. So here we got our initial send pillar, in this case just these iron blocks here. So in the second phase, the TNT will just shoot the send diagonally downwards. But this time the velocity that it will give in the downwards direction is actually much more. So here you can see the send was barely below the TNT, which means that it will mainly travel in this and in this direction, but not much downwards. And here it's kind of almost the opposite, where it will mainly travel downwards and not necessarily much in this direction. So anyway, the send will start going down according to the triangle, and it will hit the ground here. Then you think it might turn into a block, but it actually still has momentum in this direction. Remember, we're shooting the send in two directions here. So it will continue flying in this direction until both the momentum in both directions is stopped, and only then it will turn into a block. Then the next entity is processed, and it will continue the same path, and it will turn into a block here. And like this, all the blocks in this bottom row are filled up until this block is filled up. And then the send entity that will be processed next will actually hit this block and then fly over, and it starts basically the next row of blocks. And like this, you can fill in an entire wall inside the same game tick with send. There are two really important things that you have to realize here. So two very important problems that I had to overcome with this machine. So first of all, in this case I had to complete one downwards triangle before I could possibly even start building the pillar. Here I don't have time, or basically I can't complete the first triangle. So in order to actually make sure that this send can fill up against this pillar, I need to give this send way more downwards momentum than the send to create the pillar. So that's why I also put this send down a full block in regard to the TNT. And this send I basically put at the same height, but you just have to imagine that it's ever so slightly lower than the TNT. Now the second thing that's really important to realize here is that this pillar I basically can create anywhere with this technique by blocking this in the correct directions. but because with the wall technique I need the downwards part of the sand triangle to be inside the edge of the wall, like you can see right here, I have to make sure that I explode this sand basically from one edge of the wall. In other words, I can't propel the sand for the pillar and the sand for the wall from the same place. So those are two really important problems that you have to realize. Now, in the third step, it will actually fill in the entire block, which fortunately is not much different from creating a wall, except that you're using 3 dimensions. So again, just imagine your two walls being here. Then you again propel sand downwards quite a lot, so give it really a lot of downwards momentum. So the sand will go down like this, hit the ground, move over, hit the first wall, still move over, because in this case it has momentum in 3 directions opposed to 2 directions, and only here it will create the first sand block. Then again, according to the same technique as before, it will fill out this entire basically column here. And right now what will happen is this sand will now collide with this sand block, or this sand entity I should say collides with this sand block, which means that the path will change like this, and then it starts filling in the second row. And when it's to this situation again, it will change the path again, and it will fill in the third row. And like this, slowly the entire area is filled in. And I say slowly here, but actually I mean inside the same game ticks. Alright, so once the bottom layer is filled in, the sand triangle will be like this. And it places the sand here. And then it starts filling in the second layer. And like this, if you have enough sand entities right here, so if you have enough sand entities here to fill in this entire block, it will actually fill in the entire block in one game tick. Alright, so now it's actually time to move on to the machine. So I will first explain how the triangles work inside this machine, and then we can look at the machine in action again. So what happens? First, we've got all the sand right here, and this already is like organized into basically the different parts that it will fill in the sand block. So here we've got 5 sand, which will create the initial pillar. Then the sand in this block here will create the first wall. This here will create the second wall. And lastly, all this sand here will actually fill in the last block. So what happens? On the start, when you activate the machine, all the sand will fall down. And it falls down on these fences, which means that it will stay inside entity form like this. And from here everything has to happen extremely quickly, because the sand can only stay in entity form for I believe roughly 30 seconds. Anyway, after this the sand is basically transported. And for example here you can see that the sand is shot into the main machine here. Now this is also the place where it dupes the TNT, and the first batch of TNT will fall on top here, and it propels the sand downwards into the main machine. So basically what will happen is these 2 fences will be retracted right when the TNT explodes, which basically means that the TNT will give the sand very little downwards momentum. And well, obviously, like explained earlier, it first will do the downwards part of the triangle. But right when the sand is at this height, it will have completed all the downwards momentum for the first triangle. And it will actually start moving in the next direction, which is like this. And you can see one of these pistons is extended. And the sand will basically bump into this piston, where it will move into the next direction. And here it bumps into the slab here, where it goes down. And with the sand update order like we've seen previously, it will actually create a pillar here. And since we use 5 sand, the pillar here will be 5 blocks high. So in basically the first explosion, it will instantly create a sand pillar here of 5 blocks. Then what happens next is this batch of sand also has fallen down, and it will be moved through the same system here, and it will actually also land on this pillar. So now something quite complicated happens. So the dupers will fire twice, and the first set of TNT will again land here, and it will be used to propel the sand downwards again. But the second set of TNT will actually be duped later, which means that it still has a little bit of fuse time left, and it will also be shot away by the system. But what happens is there is basically a clever timing system here, which will mean basically that the TNT at the moment of explosion will be roughly right here. So previously I had a slab right here, so just imagine that the TNT will be just below the slab. So what happens right now? The sand is slightly below the TNT, while this set of TNT is slightly above. So when this TNT explodes, this TNT will be sent upwards, and remember there was a slab here, so the TNT will bump into the slab and it loses all Y momentum and it will be sent off in this direction. At the same time, however, the sand is slightly downwards and it will, or was slightly below this TNT, so it will fly downwards and it bumps into this fence here. And after that it will also travel in this direction. Alright, so now we've got the sand entities and the TNT entities separated. So you can imagine it like this. So the sand is flying along here at the bottom, while the TNT flies at the top. Now, since we're aligning the TNT against the slab and the sand on top of this fence gate here, both the paths actually will be 1 or half a block higher. So the sand will be between these two blocks and the TNT will be between these two blocks. But just to keep it simple, I will just show it like this for now. Alright, so what happens? The TNT continues flying until it hits this piston, and the sand will actually also hit this piston since it's half a block higher, and then they fly in the last direction. Now what happens here? Well, basically when the second TNT explodes, these fences will actually be opened, which means that both the sand entities and the TNT can travel through here, and they will continue traveling basically in this direction. And the sand will basically hit this block or this obsidian, and the TNT will hit this obsidian. So now all momentum in the Y direction, the X direction and the Z direction is cancelled, which means that the TNT will just fall down for a bit and the sand entities will also fall down a bit. And they end up roughly in this position here. And right there you can see your pillar. And now this actually should remind you of the second situation that we have right there, where you can see the TNT and the sand, and together they create this triangle where you can build a wall. And that is exactly what happens here. So right now this TNT will propel the sand downwards, and you can see that there's really quite a big distance between the sand and the TNT downwards, which means that it will really give this large downwards part to the triangle. So where previously the triangle kind of stopped basically at this height in order to build the pillar, this triangle will be big enough to actually reach all the way to the bottom. And when it is here, it will move over like this, and you can see that the sand actually starts creating this wall here. And this is how you create the first wall. Now the third explosion is really quite similar. So again, we will get this batch of sand all the way into the machine right here, and then we explode the TNT into a similar way. So again, what you will see is the exact same path for the sand and for the TNT. However, what happens is we change the signal strength here, which changes the pistons that are extended, and we also depower all these trapdoors here. So what happens is this time the TNT won't bump into these pistons that were previously extended, but the TNT will actually bump all the way into these pistons. The same goes for the sand, because the sand will now bump into these pistons. And then they will continue flying like this, until they hit the closed trapdoors. And now you can see something quite similar. So the TNT will fall down, and it will actually fall down all the way until it is inside the water. And the sand will fall down all the way until it's like right here inside this sign. So again, this should remind you of the second situation we had there. So the TNT here will propel the sand, and again the sand will fly downwards like this. And again, the triangle, the downwards part of the triangle is again really big, so it will make it all the way to the bottom here. And when it is at the bottom, it will fly over and again create the second wall here. So this here is how the machine fills in the second wall. Alright, so the last step is to fill in this entire area. And for this, we first have to get the sand. Now the amount of sand that you need to fill in this entire area is absolutely stupid. So it's this giant block here, which all falls down and all gets shoved into this one single spot here. Now what then happens is we change the signal strength for these pistons again slightly. So this block here will be removed again. But these fences stay closed. So again what will happen is the same TNT and the same sand is shot across these paths. So what this time will happen is the sand will continue its path like this, and the TNT will continue the path like this. And then they both hit these fences where right now all the momentum is lost. So the TNT will fall down and again land inside this water. And right now the sand also falls down. But this time you can see, so previously the sand was inside the fence, so inside here, which means that it only got momentum inside two of the axes. But this time the sand will actually be right here, and you can see that this time it will get propulsion in all three directions. So you can see this corresponds to the third situation, where you can fill in the entire wall, and that is what happens here. So I will now activate it and talk you through what is happening at each step. But again, everything happens within 30 seconds, and also I can't really slow the game down because the sand entities and the TNT entities aren't really rendered properly. So let's just hope for the best. Alright, so first all the sand gets dropped, and the first batch of 5 sand is shoved in here immediately, and it gets blasted down there. Then the second batch is dropped all the way till there, and it explodes and creates the first wall. The third batch explodes right here, and then the fourth batch will explode here, although it's really laggy because of all the sand entities. So again, let's just see that one last time, now that you know where you have to look at. Alright, so first batch creates the wall, or creates the pillar, I mean. Second batch will be all the way in the back here, and it creates the wall. Third batch will be here. Then the last batch, which is really laggy, will be right about where I'm aiming. Yeah, and there it goes. And that is how you can kind of recreate the fail command in survival. So yeah, there's really like a lot more interesting stuff to talk about. For example, these TNT Jupers are also a really interesting project. The redstone itself also is somewhat interesting because there really needs to happen a lot of stuff like really quickly. So also to transport all this sand quick enough is really interesting. So I guess I can just quickly show the solution that Khazamer and I came up with. So to transport all the sand we use this piston feed tape with fences. You can see how the sand just gets pushed around inside the piston feed tape, and then it gets like stored into the central location here. But yeah, I think it's better if I just keep it like it is right now. Like I can continue explaining, but most of you probably have had enough information inside this video for now. And these TNT Jupers, I'll promise that I'll make a second or a separate video on them because they're really interesting. So you can just keep an eye out on that. And obviously if you've got any questions on stuff that I either didn't explain or explained too quickly, you can always ask them to me in the comments. Then again, one last thanks to Methodz. Really, I suggest to check out his channel. He has a lot of interesting stuff. Also, in some of his videos he used similar mechanics, or he explained like similar stuff but in a bit of a different way. So if my explanation was like too chaotic or too quick, you might want to check out his video. Yeah, I guess that's all for this video. I'll see you guys in the next video.